Welcome to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast, episode 1. I'm so excited to bring this to you today. We've got Sarah on the podcast. Off the bat, I must apologise that I have been trying to kick a cough for like 2 weeks now, and I just can't put my life on pause anymore. We need to keep forging ahead. So yes, I've recorded a few episodes and I might sound a little bit more nasally than usual, so I apologize for that. You're just going to have to put up with it, and hopefully we're back in good health soon. Is anyone else battling those winter bugs at the moment? I'm so over it. I wanted to add as well that if you are recently married and would like to come on the podcast, I'd love it if you could slide into my DMs at the Kiwi Wedding Podcast on Instagram. And yeah, we're looking for guests, so let's chat. Today we have Sarah on the podcast. Sarah and her husband Joseph got married in March 2023 this year. Sarah is a friend of mine, so I was lucky enough to be a guest at this wedding, which is such an honour and something so rare for me as a wedding photographer. I'm usually working at weddings, so it is so nice to be a guest on that rare occasion that it happens. So I got to see a bit of the behind the scenes of this, and I'm really excited for you to hear this chat. There is so many nuggets of wisdom in there. She has some great advice. So if you're planning a wedding at the moment, you're going to love this one. All right, enjoy episode 1 with Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm so used to doing business interviews, so it's a nice change to talk about a wedding, my wedding.
Yay, so good. So obviously we're friends and I know a lot about your wedding story, but I'm excited to share it with everyone. So just to start off with, if you could tell us a little bit about you and your husband, how you guys met and what you like to do together.
Sure. So we have known each other for quite a long time. I joined his church 8 years ago and we weren't friends straight away. We were sort of in the same youth group and then we were in the same friend group a few years in. So we'd go on hiking trips and a lot of outdoorsy stuff. We did like the Tongariro crossing, whitewater rafting, stuff on weekends, but it was always within a group. And we did sort of gravitate towards each other within the group. Like we've always just got on really well. And for example, if we were going on a hike or something, for the car trip for getting there, Joseph would often drive. I'd be in the passenger seat, a few friends in the back, and Joseph and I would just talk the whole time. And our friends would actually nickname it the Joseph and Sarah podcast, because for them in the back seat, it sounded just like a podcast to them, just like constant talking back and forth. And then it was the beginning of last year that we started to do more together. We'd hang out alone. We'd go to the beach a lot. We'd swim. We got our bags stolen, just casually thrown in there. And then that brought about us dating. We crossed that threshold. And so that was April 2nd last year. So we missed out on April Fool's Day by a day. And then we got married March this year. So we were married within a year of dating. But yeah, we just are very laid back. We love food. We love cooking, love the outdoors, the beach. And it's pretty special that we can look back and there's just so much history, you know, like at the beginning of last year, we were not even together, which is crazy to me because now we're married. So that's a bit about us.
So good. Yeah, I love that you guys' relationship started with friendship for many years. So, and it was almost like, I don't know, it all did happen really fast because you already knew each other so well. And then, yeah, when you know, that's what they say.
Exactly.
So can you tell us a little bit about how your proposal happened and your story with that?
I had a feeling it was going to happen on the day that it happened. We had been talking about getting married for a while. It was quite an open conversation. And I sort of did the math because I realized, okay, we both wanted to have a warmish wedding. So we wanted it over summer and it was beginning of October. And I was thinking, okay, it's going to happen, you know, over the next few weeks at some point, just so that we can plan this wedding. And we'd hung out on the Saturday, but I just knew it wasn't going to happen that day. But it was the next day on the Sunday, had a feeling that I'd go to bed an engaged woman. And so we went to church together, and then it was a sunny day, so very typical us, beach. We went to the supermarket, got some rolls, some ham, and we sort of said, should we do Long Bay or should we go to Bethel's Beach? And we decided on Bethel's Beach. And so we drove out there and we had a picnic rug. We set up on the dunes and we ate our lunch. We were playing Boggle, which is such a great game to take to places because you just put it in your bag, very small. And we're in the sun, and I sort of turn around and I see this ring next to his pocket. We were both lying on the rug. And I was like, oh my goodness, I thought this, oh my goodness, it's actually happening. But I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to ruin the moment. I didn't want him to know that I'd seen the ring. And I am one of those people, if I'm freaking out inside, but I'm trying to keep my cool, I'll just talk heaps. So I was talking heaps and being like really chatty. And then he suddenly just like pulls me up and he proposes. And it was so us because it was simple. It was at the beach. And it was just so special. We just walked around and we were just so excited. And then we drove back home and we, told our families. And then all of the wedding prep started from there.
So good. I love that story. And it is so you guys. Very like Kiwi engagement at the beach. Sounds like a dream.
Yeah. And I think you... Oh, sorry. I think you were one of my first friends to find out because we caught up the next morning and I had the ring on and it was all very, very exciting.
So good. Such an exciting season of your life that goes quite quickly, but yeah, so cool. So had you been one of those girls that like always dreamed about your wedding, and did you know exactly what you wanted? Talk to us a little bit about your like vision and your ideas for what you wanted for your day.
We both had always envisioned a warm outdoor ceremony, ideally in summertime. And as I said, we're both very relaxed, very laid back. And so we wanted that to reflect into our wedding. And so when we looked at venues, we set aside a Saturday and we looked at a bunch out in Kumeu because a lot of them are outdoor wedding venues. And a lot of them, they were beautiful, but they weren't us. They were quite manicured, ornate fountains, marble pavilions. And so we ended up with Kumeu Valley Estate. As soon as we went there, we knew that that was the place because it was very natural looking. It wasn't super, manicured. And when you're there, you almost feel like you're way hours out, in the countryside. And yeah, it was just very us. It's not super bougie, not super, fancy or glam, but it's well done and it's still a beautiful place. And it has a very relaxed atmosphere.
So nice. I've photographed quite a few weddings there, and it was so nice to be a guest at your wedding there as well. A little bit like rustic, natural vibe, I guess, and really nice like outdoor surroundings. So good. And did you have any ideas about what you wanted for like colors or a theme or anything like that?
My favorite color is blue. And that's his as well. So we definitely wanted blue infused into the wedding. So the bridesmaid dresses were blue. And I'd always said in the lead up to the wedding, I care about the bridesmaid dresses because in the weddings that I've gone to, I always remember the bridesmaid colors. And that's, you have your flowers and your centerpieces and your serviettes and stuff. But the thing that you remember the color of the most is the bridesmaid dresses. And so they have to be blue. And we found the perfect blue. We didn't have a set theme, but we did want it very natural, relaxed looking. So our florals were very loose. For our centerpieces, we did bring through a bit of a beach theme. We hired some sort of cylinder glass vases from a prop shop. We went and got sand from a bunch of beaches and put the sand in the vases, got some candles, had them in the vases as well. And yeah, so I wouldn't say there was a set theme, but there was definitely blue. There was a bit of beach, and it was very natural, relaxed looking.
It's so nice to incorporate those like personal touches into it as well. And the beach is such a theme through your guys' story. So that was so special. And yeah, I guess you kind of go off what would suit the venue as well. And that really like relaxed, a little bit wildflowers and stuff like that's just worked so well at Kumeu Valley. Can you talk to me about what was the most important elements of your day, or what was like the things you wanted to prioritize if you had to choose in terms of vendors and like your dress, or yeah, what was like the most important things to you?
We really cared about the photos. That was something that we wanted to invest in. We always wanted to be able to look back at the photos in decades to come, and for the photos just to bring back all the memories. And so through your recommendation, we went with Brianna Cato. She was incredible. And just part of the thought process, I guess, with the photos is we had the decision to either have the photos on site or off site. And when we first booked at Kumeu Valley Estate, we were set on getting the photos done at Metawai because that was half an hour away, and we love Metawai. It's very us because it's a beach, and we'd been there as friends and as a couple. But then as we looked into it further, we decided not to go with Metawai for a couple of reasons. Firstly, a half an hour drive there and back means an hour of driving. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but the ceremony started at 3 p.m. It was a 7-hour package. So 1/7 of that time being spent driving is a pretty big proportion. And it would just mean that we'd have a bit more time pressure and there'd be less wriggle room on the day, which wasn't something that we wanted. We didn't want it to feel really regimented. And we also, and this is probably quite helpful when you're planning your wedding, is we looked at other couples' wedding photos. And we looked at a really wide range, as well as, photos specifically taken at Metawai. And we analysed them, and we, in the end, were really drawn to those photos taken in an abandoned field, tall grass, trees in the background, a very rural farm feel, bit of colour there. And so it was such a win-win because there were heaps of locations like that near the venue, and Brianna went scouting, she went door knocking, which was so incredible of her, and she just found the perfect field, and it was a short drive, and we're so happy with the photos. So I would definitely suggest having a look at other wedding photos and truly figuring out what you want. And if it is off-site, weigh up, the time. How long is that going to take? And what is that going to mean for the rest of the day? So photos was a biggie. And we're also really happy that we got a wedding video taken because, again, we can watch that back in years to come, and that just brings back so many emotions. So those areas were really important to us.
I think that's really important as well. It's not something that everyone thinks about, the amount of time in the car on the day. And even like going from you're getting ready to the ceremony, and then if you're going to go quite far off site again, then you have to add in all that time, and you're losing light, your guests are waiting longer. So exactly. That's a major thing to consider. And I love your wedding photos. Brianna did such a good job, and Patty on video. And there's so many great spots around that Kumeu area. So we'll have to post a few of those if you don't mind. Just a sneak peek. Yeah, that'd be great. So in terms of like the guest list, how did you guys find, how many guests did you have, and did you struggle narrowing that down, or what was that process like for you?
We had 59 people, including us, which I believe is considered a small wedding. And it was funny, actually, in the lead up to the wedding, I got some waxing done, and my beauty therapist, she knew the wedding was coming up. And so we were talking about weddings. And she said that she'd been invited to several weddings where she was really surprised that she'd been invited because she didn't know the couple very well. And, you know, some people, it's their dream to have the big wedding. For Joseph and I, that was never our vision for our wedding day. We only wanted to invite people who we actually wanted there. We didn't want to invite people just because we knew them. And that not only keeps costs down because you do have to pay per head for food at our venue, the venue we chose, but it also meant that all those special moments, the sparkler tunnel, the vows, you know, the recession, walking back up the aisle, it meant that all of those special moments just felt more intimate because the people that were watching were people that we truly wanted there. They were people that we love, people that we do life with. And I think it's also such a reflection of us. We are quality over quantity people, especially in terms of friendships. You know, we hang out, we're very intentional with our friendships. So I'm really happy that the guest list was the size that it was. And yeah, bonus that it meant logistically it was easier, you know, less tables, and it kept the costs down as well.
It was such a good vibe on your day. Definitely honoured to be one of that guest number as well. But yeah, I think some people have hundreds of guests and then they spend the whole day just trying to quickly say hi to everyone, or it's quite an overwhelming experience. And I hear from so many brides and couples that got married quite a while ago and they look back on their wedding and they are like, I wouldn't invite half those people now. So
Wow.
yeah, I think having a bit of like future thinking about who's going to be in your life, your family, and yeah, you have to be quite ruthless sometimes, but it's a really important day of your life. So yeah, getting a bit ruthless and narrowing that down is makes it a bit more special, I think. Just yeah, quality over quantity, like you said.
Yeah.
So good.
And I don't think people would be offended not being invited as well, because with friendships and everything, it is a two-way street. And so I don't think people would take it personally. And there is also the option of having a bigger guest list just for the ceremony and then a smaller one for the reception. And so that's something that a few of my friends have done, and that can work really well too, because the reception is pretty intimate because you've got speeches and that's when you are going to go around and chat to people. And so it makes sense for that guest list to be, you know, the people that you truly want there.
Totally. There's so many options, what you can do these days. So that's a really good one to think about. And yeah, I guess we do go through these seasons of life that your friendships change over the years or you lose touch with people. So there's always going to be some people that you might not be best friends for life with at your wedding. But being a bit more intentional about it. And if they're your friends, they're not going to be offended. If they're a good friend, they'll understand. And weddings are so expensive as well. So you just really have to factor that in.
For sure.
Is there anything else you want to talk about from on the day, how it went down? Any other details from the day?
It was such a special day. I was really fortunate. My bridesmaids got to stay with me at my mum's place, and so we had a really nice night together the night before. We had pizza, we had matching pajamas, and then the hair and makeup artist came and did our hair and makeup, and it was just such a smooth day. I remember being nervous about the weather. I was checking the forecast every day for the week leading up, which I'm sure every single bride does, and I was so happy because the forecast had said showers, but there were no showers. We didn't have to use the indoor backup option, and yeah, it was just such a special day, and I'm so glad that we got it captured, you know, so beautifully with Brianna and Patty.
Yeah, so good. You guys were very blessed. It was definitely a bit of a rainy summer this last season, so that is such a nice time of year, and I love that kind of March, April on the verge of autumn's just beautiful light, and yeah, you got such a nice day. So good.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
something I learnt from chatting with the wedding coordinator at KVE, Kumeu Valley Estate, is March is apparently one of the most settled months, which I didn't realize, because I know I said we'd wanted a summer wedding, and of course March isn't summer, but it's still warm then, so settled. And so if you are wanting a summer wedding, consider March, even April, because often you get those storms, December through Feb. And so they've been doing weddings there for years, and they've found that it's pretty dry over those months.
Great advice there. So did you guys go on honeymoon straight away, and what did the planning for that look like?
We did go away on a honeymoon straight away. We went to a hotel the night of the wedding. One of Joseph's groomsmen drove us there. And then we went straight to your lovely parents' batch in Coromandel. So, just a few hours away. And then we had a second stint up north just because we had a wedding in between to attend. But I'm really glad that we kept our honeymoon simple. And I've said this to people so often since the wedding, because we never went away together prior to the wedding. We'd never lived together. So it was such a novelty just going away together. And so we're glad that we kept it simple because it was so exciting anyway. And another thing to consider, another reason why I'm so glad we kept it simple and local, is because imagine planning a massive adventure alongside a wedding. That would just put a lot more pressure on. And for us specifically, we were also house hunting prior to the wedding because we moved in together after the honeymoon. So we weren't just planning a wedding, we were also going to bank meetings and open homes and everything. So adding in a third component of planning a really intense holiday, I think it would have just added on a lot of pressure that we wouldn't have needed. Something else, and people told me this in the lead up to the wedding, and I didn't really believe them, but we were actually really tired the couple of days following the wedding. I thought we'd be okay because we were really organized. I'm fortunate. Joseph is amazing with systems and organizing. I'm a bit more fast and loose. I'm a bit more chaotic, but fortunately, because of his brain, it was quite a smooth sail in the lead up to the wedding. So I didn't expect to feel tired, but a wedding is a really big deal emotionally and mentally. You're remembering a lot of things and there's adrenaline. And so I know I didn't sleep super well, the night before, the night after. And so the first couple of days, we honestly just napped a lot. So again, suited us really well that it was such a simple local honeymoon, because we could do that and it wasn't like, oh my goodness, we're in Europe and we're wasting this because we're really tired. Again, another thing to consider is expenses. We'd rather spread it all out, do some overseas thing in a couple of years. And so, yeah, really, really glad that it was simple. And as I said, it was a novelty. It would have been a novelty if it was Hamilton versus Europe.
Oh, Hamilton. So
sorry,
good.
Hamilton.
Well, you deserve it. Yeah, that's such great advice. So I think it sounds so amazing to like jet off to Europe and stuff. But yeah, it would be so exhausting, and thinking about planning a trip like that is so much work, let alone on top of wedding planning. And yeah, like you were buying a house and everything, it's a lot. So that just sounds ideal, doing something a bit more laid back. And then, yeah, even if you do a big overseas trip down the track, that would work out well. Yeah, it's a bit of a like come down from the wedding, such a high, and like no wonder you're exhausted, So that sounds perfect. Just going to the beach is perfect. So you guys as well. Love that. So do you have any advice that you would give to couples planning their wedding at the moment?
Yeah, I prepped out, as we were talking about earlier, I prepped out all my answers for this because I would go blank otherwise. If it was like a marketing podcast, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
And this one is definitely the longest in terms of my answer. You learn a lot when you plan a wedding, and My first point would be, don't do things that you don't want to do just because you see other people doing it. We didn't do a first dance because we didn't care for it. We do silly dances in the kitchen, but having a rehearsed dance in front of everyone wouldn't have felt like us. And that would have brought in another component, rehearsals and practices, and then maybe feeling a bit nervous in the lead up. So we just fully cut that. And that's advice. Piece of advice number one, cut things you don't want to do. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do because it's your wedding. You get to make the rules. The next thing would be, don't go for the first vendors that you see, or don't go for the most obvious vendors. For example, Joseph emailed 10 to 15 local florists with the same copy and paste email. He told them what we wanted, which wasn't a lot. For context, it was buttonholes for himself and the groomsmen, a bouquet for myself, and a bouquet for each of my bridesmaids, and then sort of a medium-sized cluster for the pergola, which was our backdrop at the ceremony. So he sent that bullet point list and he sent our budget. Only half came back, which is fine. And we went with the one that said, yes, we can work within your budget. Because, side note, we didn't prioritize the flowers as much as other things, such as, the photos and the video and, the venue. And so we didn't necessarily want to go for, the obvious wedding florist that you see plastered in the Facebook groups or in the wedding magazines. And I work in marketing, and so I always encourage businesses to market themselves really well online. But from a consumer standpoint, it's important to remember that there could be a vendor that is amazing at what they do, but they're not great at marketing. Maybe they don't look so flashy online. They don't have the perfect Instagram feed. They don't have amazing branding. But that doesn't matter because you're not planning a product launch. You're planning a wedding. You need flowers. You need a cake. You don't need a marketing expert. And so, not always going for the obvious flashy option can save you a lot of money. And we went with Urban Flowers. They were incredible. They worked within our budget, and our budget was so much lower than what other florists had quoted, 3 times as much for our needs.
Flowers are so much more expensive than you think. Yeah.
They really, really are. And Urban Flowers were amazing, worked within our budget. And I don't know if this is normal practice, but she even sent through photos of the bouquets the night before and gave me the opportunity to get her to tweak anything. So that is piece of advice number 2 is you don't need to go for the flashiest option or the vendors that are in the magazines on the Facebook groups. Reach out to your local vendors, be clear about what you want, what your budget is, and you might be really, really surprised. And the next point is be specific with what you want. Taking the florist example again. So my process for communicating what I wanted involved going on Pinterest, pinning photos of bouquets that I liked, and then going a step further. Instead of just sending that board, I made it really clear exactly what aspects from each photo that I liked, because it's very rare that you're going to find a photo of a bouquet and you love every aspect. You love the colors, you love the ratio of flowers to greenery, you love the shape and the style, you love the specific flowers used. Very rare you're going to find a photo of a bouquet like that. I'm jealous if you do, because that makes this process easier because you can just send them that one photo. So what you do, you screenshot all of those bouquets that you love. I then pulled them into Canva because that allows you to add text onto the photos. And I wrote, I love the colors in this bouquet. I love the shape of this bouquet. I love the size of this bouquet. I love the ratio of flowers to greenery in this bouquet. I love these specific flowers, i.e. the Delilahs, or I love the greenery used here, i.e. the eucalyptus, because we need to remember that vendors are dealing with such a wide range of people with so many different preferences. You could get 10 people and they all love totally different bouquets. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's just preferences, and they can't read your mind. And so it really is up to you to clearly communicate through words and visuals what you want, whether we're talking wedding cake or flowers. And because I spent the time doing that, it meant that my florist from Urban Flowers, she absolutely nailed it. She did an incredible job, and it meant that there wasn't stress or tears or scrambling the morning of the wedding, which would be awful. And I have heard stories like that. So be specific. If you want a specific result, you need to communicate specifically. And don't be afraid to ask for help as well. I hate asking for help because I don't want to burden people. I know most of us are like that. But it's important to remember that our loved ones, they actually, most of the time, they want to help. They want to feel involved because your wedding is special to them as well. And so if you can figure out the strengths of your loved ones and then give them tasks based on those strengths, then it's such a win-win because it means something less off your plate, and it means that they get to be involved in your day, feel part of it, and feel like an active participant rather than a spectator. For example, my sister-in-law is amazing at calligraphy. So on each table, we got her to write the table name, which was a beach. We had the table for Long Bay, Bethel's Beach, Medawai, instead of table numbers. And we got our friend group to compile our playlist because they're into music. And so they, sorted out the dancing playlist, the mingling playlist, the reception playlist, all of the things. So don't be afraid to ask for help because it's a win-win. It's one less thing off your plate, and it means your loved ones have ownership and they feel involved. And something that I found so helpful, we both found this really helpful, was doing a full walkthrough of the wedding from start to finish. And then we wrote notes accordingly. So we did this first 3 months out. It would have looked like things like, do we want a videographer? We need to make that decision, yes or no. Which photographer do we want? Do we want antipasto or grazing platter, for after the ceremony? All of those decisions we had to make. We wrote that on a list. We then did this a couple of months out, a month out, a week out, the day before. Because as you get closer, more minute details are going to come up. It's going to start off broad. Okay, we need to choose a venue. We need to decide on what time the ceremony starts. But then as you get close, you're talking about, okay, does so-and-so know that they're taking the rings? Do we have ring boxes for the rings? It goes so minute. And so doing that walkthrough in the lead up was so helpful. It does take time. It probably took us like an hour each time, but it was quite fun. We enjoyed it. And we thought of stuff we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And lastly would be have lists. So we had a list, as I said, for a few months out, which was those bigger overarching decisions. Then my husband did this, by the way. He's so organized. And we used Google Drive, so it was all in the same place. Then there was a list for the week out. So that was things like Joseph's dad was going to pick up the vases from the prop shop. We already had the sand. So we would have to put the sand in the vases. That could only be done the week of because you're not going to get the vases from the prop shop a month out unless you want to pay heaps for the hireage fee. And so it was all very time specific. And then there was even a list for the day of the wedding. Things like lipstick for me. I need to make sure I've got that packed. We need to remember our vows. We need to remember our speeches. Maybe also email ourselves a version of the speech so it's digital too. All of those things. Don't leave anything up to memory. You will forget. Always put someone's name on each thing in the list so that you have ownership. If it's just on the list, you're going to forget about it because no one's got responsibility, or you're going to think the other person's going to do it. So every single thing on the list needs to have a name or both names next to it. Actually, I lied. Last thing here is if you're nervous about anything, practice it. I was really nervous about the recession, and prior to planning a wedding, I would have thought this was like an economy financial crisis thing, but I learned that a recession in a wedding is when you've just been pronounced a married couple and you walk down the aisle. I was nervous about this moment because I thought, oh my goodness, there is so much opportunity for this to look awkward. Really, like, we looked at videos and we figured out that you need high energy. And that can feel a little bit unnatural because you've just said the vows, you've just, done your kiss, you've got your rings on your fingers. It's such a special, intimate moment. And then suddenly, bam, this music comes on and high energy. So it felt, even though we were, of course, excited to be a married couple, it's such an energetic shift. So we made sure to practice that the day before the wedding. We had our recession song playing. We figured out exactly what we do, stop midway, do a kiss, do a dip, whatever, walk to the end of the aisle, do it again, whatever. So we practiced that, and I think it wouldn't have gone that well if we hadn't have practiced it.
So many good nuggets of wisdom in there, and I love that last one. I actually recently just did a post about that and how it can be a really awkward moment sometimes. Like, I've witnessed a lot of weddings where they kind of just walk down the aisle and then everyone freezes and stares at them, or even doing the whole formal recession line where you greet every single person is a bit outdated now. So it's kind of that transition from like this beautiful, meaningful moment and the legal stuff as well to like, it's party time, celebration. So yeah, you guys did that really well. I love that advice. So was there anything in terms of like websites, apps, resources that helped you during the wedding planning process and even with finding your vendors as well?
Yeah, we loved Easy Registry. We used that for our gift registry because it meant that we could pull products from lots of different websites, any website. And there was also the wishing well option, because if you go with, a department store, often it can mean that you can only add products from that department store. So you're a bit more restricted. So Easy Registry was so great. It meant that we could sift through and put on exactly, what we wanted. And then Google Drive was great. That housed all of our organizational stuff, contracts with the venue, packs for, the photographer, the videographer, our lists, all of the things were housed in Google Drive. Otherwise, we would be constantly scrambling, trying to find things from our inbox. Yeah, those two would be the biggies. And in terms of finding vendors, a bit of it's word of mouth. I was in a wedding Facebook group. I believe it's called Wedding Discussion Group, or maybe it's got, are you in it, Liz? You're probably in it.
Yeah. Know about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you can just search for terms such as, dress or whatever, and then it'll pull up all of the posts where people have talked about dresses. So some of it was word of mouth, some of it was Facebook, some of it was Google. I was really fortunate because a lot of my vendors were personal recommendations or friends. My bridesmaid, she literally did my wedding cake. She is a professional baker, and it was the most incredible cake. Our friend Christy, she did my nails as well as the bridesmaids' nails the day before the wedding. And so that was really special because it meant that a friend could be involved in that. And you, Lids, you recommended, Patty and Brie. So word of mouth is a biggie. Chatting to brides that is so, so beneficial.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much all my questions. Is there anything else you want to add or say at the end?
I feel like I gave so much advice in that previous one. But my last piece of advice would be, don't get too overwhelmed by all of the details. You can never craft an absolutely perfect day. There is no such thing as a perfect day. Figure out what you care about, whether that is the photos or food, whatever it is. Identify those things that you care about and make the day tailored to you guys, because that's what it's about. just like how we had the beach centerpieces. Find ways that you can really make it you. And enjoy the process, enjoy the lead up. Everyone always says this, but there is no time quite like that. That's not necessarily going to happen again. And I'm so glad that I had amazing friends that, helped me, and they made the process full of so much joy. For example, with the hens, that was such a special weekend, and the engagement party. And Joseph and I made sure to really enjoy the process and to not be bogged down by all of the details and we need to do this, we need to do that. So everyone always says it, and it's hard to comprehend until after your wedding, but there really is no time like that because you've got people from all areas of life coming together. So enjoy the lead up and don't get bogged down by the details.
So good. I love that. That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Lids.